Hey guys, and welcome to the latest edition of Train with Honour TV. So a little bit of an absence. This is going to be the final one before Christmas, and what better way to do it than bringing in another academy strength and conditioning coach at Shrewsbury Town. It is Mr. Ollie Green. Ollie, welcome to the show, pal.
Thank you for having me.
Very welcome. Great to have you on. So firstly, thanks very much for coming on. I understand it's the first weekend off that you've had for a little while, so I feel very privileged and conscious. I'm not going to take up too much time because I know you want to spend a bit of time sort of unwinding, having a cup of tea or what have you. So for the guys that don't know too much about you, just want to sort of introduce yourself and give a brief background of your journey.
Yeah, so that's no problem. So, I mean, for me personally, like sports fitness, football especially, has always been a massive, massive passion of mine. So, growing up, I played sports, I competed. I always knew that I wanted to work within the sports sort of area. So when it came time to realise that I wasn't going to make it professionally, and I wasn't going to be playing up in front of 50,000 people and getting my face on TV and all that sort of stuff, I started looking at university degrees. So sports rehabilitation was my undergraduate degree.
Oh, nice.
I did 3-4 years in sports rehabilitation with placements. But what I found while I was working within the degree is that when I did my placements, because I went to Bury FC, I went to Wigan, Wigan Warriors Rugby League Club, and I did bits and pieces, but I found that I had more interest in what the S&C coaches were doing, more so than what the physio and sports therapists were doing.
Okay.
So when I finished my degree, I went and worked in sports therapy for a bit, and I found the same things. My interest lay more within the gym side of things, fitness testing, training load, monitoring, all that sort of stuff, rather than the actual assessment, diagnosis, physio side of it and treatment. So I started working towards a master's, applied for my strength and conditioning master's within Coventry Uni. I did that whilst working part-time as a fitness instructor, PT and a sports therapist, and sort of interned at West Brom in the meantime as well. So I had a lot on my plate at that point.
Sounds
it was a busy year, and I just, in fairness, I just tried to cram as much as I could into that year to get as much experience to try and catch up on, because I recognise that I came into strength and conditioning a little bit later than most people who do it as an undergraduate degree. So I was trying to cram as much work into that time period so that I was playing catch up a little bit.
Okay.
And it worked well for me, if I'm honest, because I came out of it and I feel had I not done that and stretched myself like that, I wouldn't be the same sort of practitioner coach I am today.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so I'm quite sort of, I look back and things like that, and I do like to think about things that happened in my past, and that's one of the ones that for me, I think I'm glad that year was as tough as it was. And then off the back of that masters, I decided, right, I'm going to start applying in football. I want to work in football. So applications came up for academy strength and conditioning coach, part-time strength and conditioning coaches everywhere. Applying, sending off hundreds and hundreds of applications, and got nothing back at all. No success. Started reaching out to people, and I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know what I'm not doing. Like, I'm not getting any success. What can you give me any advice? How did you get into working within football? How did you get into working with an elite sport and that? Who all just gave me sort of advice. It's really hard. You've just got to persist, use the time to get extra qualifications, just keep persisting with it, see if you can get any internships, any work placements, offer yourself for free, which I started doing. And I did a lot of that, to be fair. I messaged loads and loads and loads of people. I went out of my way quite a lot to do that. I was really on it. And then in the end, on the side, I was working as a fitness instructor while I was trying to get myself into the S&C role. In a football club.
How did you deal with it? That juggling quite a lot. Obviously, studying, doing the S&C, doing the volunteering, still hunting.
It was tough, especially when. So I was working as a sports therapist at, within a local West Midlands regional league football team. Also at Dudley College, I was working with their youth athletes and stuff like that. Right. And after a few months in the role, my boss came up to me and was like, "Oh, do you want to? How do you fancy doing some lecturing as well?" Like on the side. Wow. And I was like, well, I mean, how would we fit it in? Because I'm like, I've got quite a busy schedule as it is. And he was like, oh, we'll make it work. Just let me know what times you can do, and we'll throw you in a few hours of class here, a few hours of class there. So I was like, yeah, all right. And so I ended up doing that as well, which again was a really good experience, but it became a massive hassle when I had to take home a lot of marking and assignments and stuff like that. I was already doing.
So was the guy trying to basically shift his workload onto you so that he could sort of half it and give you a bit of...
I think what it was, because it weren't his modules that I was teaching. Basically, he was the head of a whole sort of department. He organised the program, and the other staff went to him and said, "I need to drop a few modules because I'm balancing too much workload."
Yeah.
So one of them was sports injuries and stuff like that. So he was like, do you fancy doing it, as soon as how you're our sports therapist? Like, so it made sense, and it was good experience for me. It was good exposure, and later down the line, I'd like to go towards lecturing possibly anyway. So it's good experience for that. So I thought I'm not somebody, and I did see Matt Piper said it on the podcast you did with him a while back, but I'm not somebody who says no to a lot of things. If an opportunity comes up, I tend to say yeah, and then just jump in with both feet and try and handle it.
Well, this is it. So that's the best thing. It's hard to say no sometimes, isn't it? And sometimes when you see the sort of credit that's going to come with it, or you can sort of see the long-term picture of how it's going to benefit you. You've got to jump in at the opportunity while you get it, because sort of like you say, when you go off to numerous clubs, and I've done exactly the same myself, and you don't get the reply. It's almost like you feel inclined to do it, because if you don't snap their hands off while you've got the opportunity, we never know when it's going to come back up again, do we? So it's one of those where I guess you don't want to be the yes man, but at the same time, it's trying to find that balance, isn't it? Really.
I try to look at it as you're always going to get something out of it, whether it's positive or negative. So for me, the lecturing side of thing within the college, if I said yes to it and I hated it, then for me it goes, well, further down the line, if I didn't like that, then am I going to like lecturing? Do I need to look at you? So if that didn't work, but if it does work, then you go, yeah, I'm really looking forward to going into lecturing further down the line. So I think you're always going to get stuff out of it. If you say yes, you give it a go, you're always going to get stuff, whether it's positive or negative, out of it. And life experience wise, you'll always learn from it. And I think another good example for me is I was working as a fitness manager in Telford, and the opportunity to work as an intern within Shrewsbury came up. And again, it was pushing me quite a bit in terms of what I was doing and stretching me. So I basically just went, yeah, I'll do it. It's an opportunity to get my foot in the door at football. I'll go for it. And I was doing 13, 14-hour days just to get the internships in and the fitness manager role in. And I was really stretching myself again. And but I couldn't say no to it. I just couldn't, because I've been pushing to get my foot in the door. And then eventually, about 3 weeks after I started the internship, the strength and conditioning coach at Shrewsbury left and just completely handed in his notice and left. And I messaged him one day, didn't know anything about it. I was like, what time's my session tonight? Like, what time do you want me in for? And he was like, oh, I've left, mate. You're dealing with this person now. Here's his number.
Wow. Great communication there, then.
And, so I was like, oh, right, brilliant. So I started messaging, and then the academy manager, I noticed, started coming watching a few sessions of mine that I was delivering to the kids. But one day he stopped me after the session, was just talking to me. We spoke for a good half hour, 40 minutes, and had just a conversation about my background and stuff like that. A little bit like we are now about my history. And then a few days later, I got a phone call and said, would you be interested in the position? And that's kind of how I got my way into football. It was a massive stretch, and it all came over the space of probably 6 to 8 weeks, where I got a new job as a fitness manager, a new internship as at Shrewsbury, and then got offered the position at Shrewsbury, and it kind of just came all within the space of 8 weeks. So I ended up going into a new job as a fitness manager and leaving within a space of 6 weeks.
Wow, that's some story, that. But the key with that is, just don't give up, isn't it? You just expose yourself, make yourself available to as many opportunities as you've got, and then at the same time, you've got to weigh up what's best for you, haven't you? And sometimes you're going to dip your toe in it, and like you say with the lecturing, you might like it, you might not. But again, I say this quite a lot to people on blogs, on the blogs, and that if you're not willing to make yourself uncomfortable, you're not willing to take risks, then you're never going to understand you're never going to understand what you really want, and you're never going to really understand the roles and responsibilities. Because I put a post out this morning about boxing. I mean, I've got no background in boxing, no interest in actually being a boxer or anything like that. But as a PT, and you may have found this yourself, one of the first things people want to do when they come to you as a client is, do you do boxing? And it's like, well, I'm not a boxing coach, but I've got pads. Get the gloves up and great. And one of the things that I had to do then was I sort of like backed myself into a corner, because it was like, well, this person wants boxing. I've now got to deliver that. So I've got to now do the research. And 3.5 years later, I'm now doing my boxing qualification, just so that it could be better. Because it's trial and error, isn't it? It's trial and error, and adapting and overcoming, and finding what you're good at, what you're not good at, and learning, which is the most important.
You never ever stop learning, especially in sort of sports science S&C. You never stop learning. Every day I find that I'm taking away, or I'm going and looking at articles, and I'm researching stuff, and I'm researching stuff, and researching stuff, and I try to read as many articles as I can. But for me, going back to the persistence and never giving up, and just keep going and keep going, that's a massive point for me. Because I always go back to, have you seen that picture where there's two people who are digging a tunnel trying to find a diamond, and then one of them stops just a few inches short of a diamond and gives up, and then the other one just keeps going, because you never know how far you are away from that dream that you're chasing. And that's a massive thing for me. What would wind me up even more than not achieving my dream is finding out that I was that close to it, and then not getting it. So I think for me, I'll just keep going and keep going and keep going, and I look at it, but eventually if I keep going, it will come good and it will work out.
It's just that stroke of looking at, you got to be in the right place at the right time, and I suppose also getting, speaking to the right people as well, isn't it? Because if you're speaking to the right people all the time, and we spoke previously about a couple of players that we sort of know mutually, and if the attitude's there, and people can acknowledge the fact that you're willing to push yourself and do the work outside of the box, so to speak, then it's going to only set you up in good stead. So I guess the next thing would be, what's the biggest differences that you found, or what was it that sort of took you away from like the sports therapy side, or that you did initially to the S&T? What was it that sort of stood out for you?
It was more just the enjoyment side of it for me, and the fulfillment side of it. So for me, like, I was doing the assessment, diagnosis, and the treatment side of it, but I found that on a lot of occasions, you're working with people who are exaggerating the symptoms. They're telling you they've got pain here when they don't have pain, to make it seem like there's something worse than it is. And they're telling you all this stuff, so it sort of becomes more difficult for you. And I'm sort of like, just tell me what the issue is, and we can look at it and deal with it. Like, but they're trying to exaggerate the problems, and trying to do this and trying to do this, and it just, after a bit, it kind of started to annoy me a little bit. And
yeah, all the time there as well in Manchester.
Then you get players who you work with, and it'll be game day or something, and the game will get a bit physical or something like that, and they'll go in for a tackle, and they'll go down and, oh, my ankle, and you're like, there's nothing wrong with that ankle. And it was just all that sort of side of it. I was just like, well, I don't really enjoy that side of it. Like, when you're telling the manager, you're gonna have to bring him off because he quite clearly doesn't want to play on, and he's saying he's in too much discomfort, but yourself that he can quite easily play on, and he's not in that much discomfort. It's just that mentally he's not in the right place to continue, and almost the next day, or a couple of days later, they're coming back into training. The training fine, and the manager's like, well, I thought you said he can play the other day. Looks fine to me. And then you're going, yeah, well, it's kind of, and you're having to justify yourself quite a lot with that. And I didn't. That was a little bit of it was a drawback massively for me. Whereas whenever we did the fitness testing, the gym work, whenever we did any conditioning sessions, anything like that, any monitoring, training, GPS work, I loved all of that sort of stuff, and I really enjoyed it. It's something that for me, I'm massively of the mindset that you should go to work to enjoy what you do. It's not just a pay packet. It's not just bring money in. You've got to enjoy what you do, because you're going to be doing it for the next 40, 50 years of your life, potentially.
I totally agree.
You've got to enjoy it. And with my background in, like, I go to a gym all the time, I play football all the time, I'm massively into my fitness and health and training, all that sort of thing. With that background, it just suited me so much more to be around that environment and to be working within the gym and conditioning sessions and fitness testing and that. So it was more to do with where my true passions lied, more so than I had a massive problem with sports therapy. I just knew that I wouldn't be able to do sports therapy for the next God knows how many years of my life and enjoy it.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good, man. It is differentiating it, because there is a lot of pressure on you when you are in a therapy role, because it's because of all the new rules and regulations now, over especially the last sort of 10 years. You've got, if a player turns around and says, "Oh, my hamstring's gone," like I say, he will exaggerate it, but as a therapist, you've got to sort of take their word as gospel, because obviously they're going to know they're going to know their body better than what you are. But I suppose it comes into, a comparison that is like the head injury situation at the moment, with when was it David Luiz and one of the other players in a recent Arsenal game, they went up, had clash of heads, went down, and then they just turned around and said, "Nah, don't care what you say, I'm carrying on and playing." But then when it comes to the next day or the game or after the game's finished, that's when the real side effects and the long-term effects start to affect the player. But then if you look at what's going on a lot within rugby at the moment, with I don't know, all the contact and everything like that, with the amount of diagnosis for dementia, for MND, everything like that, it almost makes us as practitioners fear going against what the players say. But at the same time, it almost puts us in a sticky wicket, because we're seeing all these what's going on around us, and we're like, well, I don't want to be the one that's responsible for you having an issue later on down the line. But at the same time, I don't want to be the one that's gonna get on the wrong side, because as a coach, it's really hard no matter how hard we try, it's really hard to have that coach-player relationship, because ultimately the manager is the one that is seen as the daddy, so to speak, because they don't want to get on the wrong side of the dad, and the coach is more like the big brother, so to speak, because you want to get on, you want to make sure that that you're getting the feedback from them, that they're working for you. So it's a really hard one. I mean, how do you manage that down at the academy at the minute?
The academy is a really difficult one, like you say, because at the end of the day, all the lads, the academy manager walks in to a room, the lads are quiet, they're silent. Yeah. Like he speaks, they listen, and whereas, like you say, you need to, as a coach, have that bond with the lads that they'll get on with you. You can have a laugh with them, but they need to know that when it's time to work, it's time to work. Yeah. And that's a really difficult pattern, I find, for 16, 17-year-olds in the academy to realise that yes, we can have a laugh, but as long as you're doing what you're told, because they just think, oh, he's letting us have a laugh, we can mess about a little bit, or they think, oh, he's really strict, he's not in a good mood today. Like, so for them, it's sort of one or the other, and they see it either 100% one way or 100% the other. I think for me, I just try and reinforce the fact that, look, I don't mind you having a laugh in gym session, I don't mind you doing this, as long as you're doing what I've asked, you're doing the work, you're completing what's been done of you, you're not messing about around the equipment, and you're getting the work done that you need to get done, because ultimately, football is a high pressure sport for these kids. Like they're 16, 17 years old. Some of them are going to train with a first team environment, getting on the bench for a first team. They're being pushed in training every day almost, and it's relentless. So they need that release. They need to be able to enjoy themselves. So I think it's recognising that as well. That sometimes, although they are messing about, they are kids, and at the end of the day, they do need that time. They can't. It's like any work. It's like me and you. If we went into our job and it was just relentless, strict, and you couldn't have a laugh, you wouldn't enjoy it. And
it's time and a place, isn't it? And understanding your audience. And if you haven't got it, and once you got it, I suppose when you first go in there, you've got to be strict, haven't you? You've got to go in. I mean, I don't know what you're like, Ollie, but the first thing I'll do when I go to any new group is, right, guys, these are my 3 rules. If I talk you, listen. I expect you to work hard for the period that you're training, the 3 minutes, for example. And then if we've got a break, have a chat, have a laugh, do whatever. But these are my guidelines. And then it's one of those where you want to instill it, you want to instill the discipline, but you can't really, well, using a topical word for the time of year is, you can't be the Grinch, so to speak. You've got to keep the discipline, but allow that little bit of leeway.
Like you say, I think it is them teaching them as a time and a place. So I sort of see it more as part of a development of a kid and as a child, of the athlete's life. So almost like a training session within itself, where we're modelling these people to realise that when it comes, if they're not successful in sports and they have to go into a workplace, there's a time and a place where they can do these things. And if they are successful when they go up to a first team or first team elsewhere, then again, the first team manager is not going to stand for them doing some of this stuff. So they need to realise that there's a time and a place that they can do it. Because the other problem is they go up to a first team sometimes and they see some of the other lads messing about and like having a joke and that, and they think, oh, it's all right, he does it. But 99% of the time they do it at the right times because they've learned that.
Yeah, it's knowing, again, going back to knowing the person as well, isn't it? And it's, I suppose as well, it's what do you want to be known for as well? Do you want to be known as the joker in the pack? Do you want to be known as the one that's, that's serious and disciplined? Because at the end of the day, if it comes down, I suppose when it comes with academies, especially sort of like the second year scholars, when it comes down to like the contract renewals or when they get the first professional contract, coaches are going to obviously look at, one, the statistics of how many pass completion, how many minutes they've got under the belt, what's their injury history, but then they're also going to look at the attitude. Like, are they the players that stay behind and do the additional practices? Are they the players that come up to you and ask if there's anything they can do?
100%.
Do they come at the beginning and end of the session and things like that?
We've got a lad actually with us who's actually a second year scholar, and his attitude is phenomenal. He literally, I've said this to a couple of people, I've never worked with anyone who has a work rate for such a young kid, who has a work rate and a mentality like he does. And I'd be surprised going forward if I do again, because he's that good. The coaches love him. Really, really nice kid. Never have any issues with him messing about. And he gets opportunities to go up to the first team because the coaches go, do you know what? He deserves it. Yeah. He's been really good. His attitude's unreal. He comes in, he works hard. He deserves that opportunity. And then I've seen other players who are really, really talented, are good enough and deserve on talent to go up and train with the first team, but their attitude absolutely stinks. And the academy manager will go, I'm not sending them up just out of principle because I need to learn.
Yeah, well, it's a reflection. It's a reflection on you at the end of the day, isn't it? Or the academy manager. If they're going to send the player up and they're messing about, first team gaffer's going to turn around to you and say, look, what are you playing at sending me this guy? What sort of representation is that of the academy? Because this is another thing that I think is really important for players, especially that are involved in clubs, whether it's Sunday League or professional, is what they don't understand is when they're wearing a club badge or when they're contracted to a club, it's not just them that they're representing, it's the family, it's the coaching staff, it's the club badge, it's the history, it's absolutely everything. And I think this is why so many clubs really, you look at players like Colin Kazim Richards, for example. He had a really, really bad start to his career because of what he was going out and doing what he shouldn't have been doing from what the media portray. But I mean, I've spoken to a guy that worked with him, one-to-one in an S&C capacity, and he said that he was one of the nicest guys, hard-working guys when he came into the gym. But because they're in the media eye, all it takes is that one person to tarnish the reputation, isn't it? And
definitely.
And I think this is why you've got some players that have the Joey Bartons of the world and the Jack Rodwells that have unfortunately got this tag of being troublesome players, whereas in reality they probably haven't. But because of how one person's viewed it, it's taken us, isn't it?
It's a really interesting point, in fairness, because I was lucky enough over lockdown to do a video call where John McGinn was one of the guests, and he was speaking about it was almost like a Q&A format, and somebody asked him like the most hardworking player, and the name that cropped up. And the name he said, without any hesitation, he said Jack Grealish.
Yeah.
Jack Grealish is somebody who, like you say, gets a lot of negative media attention. But from what John McGinn was saying, he comes in early every day. He leaves late every day. He practices and practices. He works so hard in training, and he practices hours after training to ensure that he's in the best shape, and technically he's the best he can be going forward into the games of the season. And I think that's the other side. I think that people don't really see within sports.
You've hit the nail on the head. Absolutely hit the nail on the head there. It's the outsider's perception. They never know what's going on. Never know what's going on the inside. And that's the problem with the media, is they don't care about the effect it has on a player. All they care about is getting a story. And if they can get that story to sell the papers, they don't care whether it damages a player's career or not. So I'm just thinking about like the preparation of and the player discipline and that. We see a lot on like social media, the player preparation before they get into sessions and that. At Shrewsbury, in your experience, do you find that when it comes to preparation, i.e., activation work before the players get on the field, do you find that they sort of lean on the coaches to sort of turn around to them and say, right, well, you've got to be in the gym half an hour before you're due on the field because you need to get activated, you need to get your band working, or do they sort of do it under their own pretenses at the minute?
With us at the minute, you've got a few players who will just go in. You say to them, right, lads, activation in the gym this time, they'll be in there. Then there's a few you need to literally drag in, kicking and screaming.
It's not the best, not the most sexy, is it? To be honest, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it's one of them where I don't think they necessarily understand the importance of it. And even though we try to talk them through the importance of it, they don't like. It's like stretching to a certain extent. Yeah. Like they don't want to do stretching because it's boring to them. They don't want to do it, and they don't understand how important it will be and how effective and efficient it can be for their recovery and their flexibility, mobility, all that sort of stuff. And because they don't understand that, it's almost like they don't want to then go and do it. Whereas if you say to them, right, we're going to do possession, we're going to work on a possession drill with a football, kicking the ball around. Yeah, I can understand this. It relates to football because of this and this and like get them in the gym and get them doing something different. Although for me, I'm a massive advocate of trying to educate the players. So when I set anything in the gym, I'll always talk them through why we're doing it. And then at the end of a session, I'll call them in, I'll recap what we did, and I'll say, does anyone have any questions about what we did today, why we're doing it? And then I'll try and encourage them to ask me questions so that they understand, because I think if they know why we're doing something, the buy-in gets greater. So in the past, I've done like little presentations with them. So going, right, we're now moving on to this block of training. These are the exercises we're going to be mainly focused on. This is what they do. This is what they should look like, correct technique, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And like I say, I'm a massive advocate of education of the players. So because I think that's the best way to get the buy-in. And it is difficult, but you do have you're always going to have some players who absolutely mug it off and some players who just go in and do it. And then some players who you need to give a little bit of a push, but will do it once they're told. Yeah, that's kind of with us. That's where we sit with it at the minute.
To be honest, it's great that you got the education side. I'm a big believer in educating, because people have got to understand the why, because it comes through the motivation side. If people don't understand why they're doing it, or why they're getting injured, or how they're going to reduce their risk of injury, they're not going to do it. And it always happens too late, I find, with a lot of players, and unfortunately a lot of players' careers are cut short as a result of injury. And this is because, and I think a lot of this is because of the players don't get educated as much. And I guess it very much depends on the team that you've got around you, in terms of how much buy-in has the academy manager or the head coach got in strength and conditioning. What's their understanding of it? Because at the end of the day, ultimately, the players come in and they're going to be playing football. So, they don't think about the background stuff, so to speak. So, like you say, the education is absolutely crucial. And when it comes to mobility and, things like that, there's no real substitute for, doing things like your band work, your 1-2, things like your 1-2 sticks, or your flexion extension. Because when it comes to obviously doing things like your back squats, do your pre-season testing, if they don't understand that it's going to have an effect on the test results, or it's going to improve their speed and a lateral or linear movement, then I guess they're not going to do it. So yeah, the education's really important.
100%. And I'm quite fortunate in a sense that the team I've got around me and the academy manager is massively supportive of what we do. He encourages the lads, he pushes the lads, and he always says, look, if there's anything extra you need, anything sort of in the gym you don't understand, ask Ollie a question, come and speak to him because he will help you. And he'll always push them. If you don't understand training reports while you're here, like the training reports you're getting, you're frequently here, or you're not accumulating as much sprint distance, or you're doing this, or you're doing, then just come and ask him and speak to him, and we can figure that out. Like, but he has been very, very good, in fairness, with me and with the whole sort of thing. I've got a massive buy-in from him, so that makes my life a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, and it does make, you know, you touched upon the reports there as well, and that's another huge thing. Whether it's a PT client in the gym, or whether it's an elite athlete or a semi-pro athlete, they've got to see the progress, because ultimately that's what's going to spur them on. You know, talk about the motivation. If it's a player that, I mean, when the players see these reports, what sort of a reaction, Ollie, do you get from them? Do you get them sort of questioning sort of like the way that they go about their day to day? Do you see much sort of change in their attitudes after the reports for like a 2-week period, and then maybe drop off, or do you see them consistently sort of changing their?
It tends to vary. It's another interesting one, because you get some athletes who are continuously every day at the top of the training reports in terms of distance covered and that, and then you'll get some who are consistently at the bottom in terms of, and then if it becomes a pattern, we end up having a talk to them, and then they start to become aware of it. And sometimes I'll send out a training report, and someone will have covered, say, a kilometre and a half less in a training session than somebody else, and they'll message me straight away when the report goes out. My GPS can't be working. Like, and I'm like,
it's never them, is it? It's something else. Never me, somebody else.
Yes, it's the fact that you didn't run. Like, and so what I always do to him is I don't want to shut them down straight away, and I'll go, right, okay, I'll tell you what we'll do then, just to double check your GPS. I'll take the person who was top of a report today, you'll wear his GPS tomorrow, and he'll wear yours, and we'll see how it comes out. And I actually did this quite recently with one of the players, and it was funny because we took these two players, one was at the bottom, one was consistently at the top.
Yeah.
We wore each other's GPS, and what would you know? Swapped round.
Oh.
The lad who had been wearing the one he claimed to be broken was then at the top, because the other lad was wearing it. And then who was normally at the top, came down to the bottom. And I was like, so I put out the training report, and I'm like, the evidence is there. Like it's not the GPS, it's you. You need to.
Exactly that. And, you know, it sounds nasty calling people out, but when you do it like that, it's a great thing, because you catch them out, isn't it? It's like you know, you can't cry wolf. You can't, you know, if you're going to cry wolf every time, when it comes to the point where you actually need them, you know, it's not going to happen. And you do.
That's another thing. I'm a massive sort of advocate of not just shutting them down straight away, but proving that they're wrong. If they're saying it's a GPS isn't working, and I know it's not, like I'll hear them out and I'll look into it. And if it is a fault with a GPS, then fine. So I'll look into it. But I'm a massive advocate of, right, I'm not going to just tell you that it's that you're not running. I'm going to prove to you that it's that you're not running.
Yeah.
If you see it, you physically see that it's you that's not running, they're more inclined to get that switch flicked in the head. And off the back of that, in fairness to him, he has come up on the training reports, and he has started running more. So it's I think that's, for me, especially because I think society's a little bit soft at times nowadays.
100%.
If we go too strict on him, like maybe 10, 20 years ago there might have been, then there's a chance that the kid just shuts off and just can't deal with it, and the pressure gets to him, and the kind of like a little bit have a bit of a breakdown and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's almost a psychology aspect of it as well, where you have to be you almost have to be trained as a counsellor to deal with it.
It's because there's so many different backgrounds, isn't it? You got some players who are coming in who've gone up on a council estate. Sometimes you've got millionaires, kids coming and playing at the academies. You've got players who are got, you know, parents not working for whatever reason, parents that are working, and it is and again, it comes down to knowing your players, doesn't it? And you know, and I suppose identifying trends, not only in the statistics that you're gaining, but in their behaviour. And I guess with the reporting, that's going to sort of reflect how they're performing that. So, you talk about the players, going from transition from academy up to the first team. As staff, do you also get the opportunity to go and maybe shadow or work with the first team sports science team as well, to sort of help you with your CPD and sort of to try and buy into the new man? Because I know obviously a new manager's just gone in there at the moment, isn't it, in Steve Cottrell and that. Have you found any differences with like what his philosophy was to the previous managers in terms of the academy transition and the staffing transition and all that sort of stuff? Or
for me at the minute, we do get opportunities to go up to a first team. I've been up there a few times, worked with a first team SSC coach and observed and seen what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And then quite recently, his wife went into labour, so I had to cover for the week up there.
Oh.
That was just before our old manager got sacked.
Yeah.
And so I haven't actually been up there yet with a new manager. But it all gets fed back down because our academy manager's very insistent on aligning the first team and the academy.
That's perfect.
So he's literally like, there's no point in having an academy if it's not aligned to what the first team needs to do. So we're just hemorrhaging money if we've got players who aren't used to playing the same style of play or aren't willing to meet the demands that the first team need and all that sort of stuff. Because academies costs clubs a lot of money.
Yeah.
So he's a massive believer in that. And currently he's actually gone up and he's the first team coach temporarily for the first team. So he's working around it every day.
Oh.
So from what I get, the feedback I get is the new manager is relentless in the sense that he's on it, everything. He works really hard. He's in there. He's doing everything. He's looking at things. His eye for detail and attention is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And when our academy manager, who I said to you earlier, is relentless himself and does not stop and works and works and works, saying that about somebody, I don't know whether it makes me a little bit worried to go to the first team.
You sort of watching, you sort of looking over your shoulder. It's like, right, am I safe to work today, or can I try something different?
But it is like it seems like he knows what he wants. He knows exactly how he's going to go about achieving it. He's getting stuff in place, getting stuff organised, and it looks like he knows, like I say, how he's going to go about achieving the goals that he wants to achieve. So I suppose only time will tell. But the feedback I've had so far has been really sort of positive.
I can imagine. And so, if you don't mind, sort of touching upon the transition from the old manager to how did it impact on yourself and like the the staff in general? Because I mean, from previous experience, I remember when I was at Northampton a few years ago, the manager left, and we sort of had a bit of concern about our own jobs and everything like that. How does the sacking of a manager impact you as a coaching team, and what effect does it have on the players?
It's another interesting question, really, because it almost to a certain extent consumes most of your day. Because I mean, and I work with the old manager like on bits and pieces, and like when I covered for a week, I was with him day to day, and in fairness, he was really good guy. Really got on with him. I really liked him. Really nice person. I haven't got a bad word to say about him. And when that happened, it was almost like, from an academy point of view, it's your whole day. You're going, I wonder who we're going to bring in. What's his emphasis on the academy going to be? The academy players. Oh, do you know who the new manager is yet? Do you know, ever talking to anyone? Have you interviewed anyone? Oh, do you reckon he's going to just buy players in? Or and it was all these questions, and your whole day is geared around that. And then obviously our academy manager went up to the first team to coach to help while he transitioned. So our lead PDP is currently covering the academy, and so there's that transition as well, of dealing with that. So the academy manager's not here at the minute, so we need to keep standards up. We need to make sure that everything's running how it needs to be running. And it's a really weird time, because this is my first sort of like being in a job where a manager's been sacked and the new one's come in like that.
Yeah.
So it is a really weird time, but it literally consumes your whole day. And then when the new manager comes in, what's he like? What's he like? What's he doing? Like, is he going to look towards the academy? Are we going to get players in? Are we going to do it? So like, and there's even more questions once a manager comes in. What's his background and his history of bringing players through and working with the academy? Does anyone know anything about him? And all these questions come through, but it's a little bit of it's an exciting time. It's interesting. There's a lot of questions, but it's just it's one where you do sort of fear a little bit for your job, because you do think football's one of those sports where things change very quickly.
Yeah.
And if he hasn't got an emphasis, the manager comes in who doesn't have an emphasis on the academy, and isn't that bothered about it, doesn't have an emphasis on sports science and that, because there are some managers who just don't really see it, don't really buy into it, and if there is that, then you start to worry a little bit. So there is all those questions, but like I say, luckily for me, again, I'll reiterate, the academy manager is really, really good. He's got a massive buy into sports science. He really believes in it. So he works with me quite closely, and I work with him quite closely. And whenever we do training sessions, we'll sort them out like together. We'll go through the training sessions together, loads, all that sort of stuff. We'll go through a training course together, and so I'm quite fortunate to be in that position. So I suppose with Shrewsbury as well, being a League One club, they almost have to look to the academy to a certain extent, because they haven't got the finances that say your Liverpools, your Man Cities, and everyone else has got. And especially in a time like now, where fans haven't been in for so long, so financial implications come into play. So they won't have as many funds to go out and buy players. So I suppose that's you kind of saving grace to a certain extent. Where
pathway, isn't it? Which is ideal.
Yeah, definitely. And it's all about creating that pathway for the players. And I think we have a really, really good pathway at Shrewsbury, and we're developing a really good pathway. And we're getting players up. We've had about 3 of our under-18s make debuts this season off the bench. So, I mean, you look at that in itself, and it looks positive, in fairness. So hopefully that continues, and we can get some signing contracts and that.
Something like that would be absolutely brilliant. So, sort of like coming towards the end of the podcast now, I mean, what sort of advice would you say to any players that are currently free agents looking to get into an academy setup? What would be like the 3 main qualities that you would look for as an S&C coach in terms of the physicality, and what in term would you be looking more for a comparison to a current player that you've got to maybe that might give them an advantage, or is it a case of there'd be other qualities that you'd look at?
I think for me, there's the attitude's a massive one.
Yeah,
attitude's a massive one, especially with the set of the team we've got in the academy at the minute. We've signed a player this season that we weren't 100% convinced on, but his attitude was phenomenal. So we literally then we were like, right, he's got such a good attitude, we're going to give him a chance. He deserves it. He's worked really hard. So your attitude there, your work rate and mentality has got to be there. It's got to be there. Again, I'm speaking from a setup that we have at Shrewsbury. Our academy manager does he run? Does he want to run? Does he want to work off the ball? And I suppose that falls in with attitude a little bit as well. I think you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to go and reach out to people. You've got to persist. And like I alluded to earlier, with the being persistent and trying to get into S&C, it's the same thing. If you've got that sort of goal, you've got to persist. You've got to keep going and keep going, and not be willing to take no as right, I'm done. It's a not back here, but it doesn't mean that's your final destination. You just keep going, and message people, like I say, make contacts, network, all that sort of stuff. And I think from a physical point of view, one of the things we're looking at the minute at Shrewsbury, because we are looking to play a more high pressing style of play, we look for runners. Can they run? If they can't move, it doesn't matter how good they are on the ball. If they can't move, they can't run, they're not going to be able to play our style of play. We're going to get found out. It's going to expose us, it's going to leave gaps, and therefore they're not going to get signed. If they can move, they have a chance. If they can run, if they're fit, if they work hard, if they've got that determination, that desire, then we'll sort of then you've got something to work with. Because I always think you can teach technique, you can teach a kid to be stronger. You can't teach sort of that determination, that inner desire to win and want to run. So I think if you've got that, it's a massive part of the bar. I don't know how many of that was. I don't know if it was free or what it was. Or
you know what? To be fair, if it was more than 3, they've got a bonus. They can just send some donations in for you to. Yeah, mate, that'd be pretty good. But that's good. But again, you know, if with the manager at the minute wanting to do the high press, I guess this comes in down to what we sort of touched upon earlier with the mobility. They've got to be able to move a lot freer, haven't they? You know, and if they can move a lot freer, then they're going to be able to perform a lot better as well. And
mobility is huge. Again, it's a fundamental basis of pretty much. If you look at the movement performance pyramid, mobility is usually either at the bottom or the second foundation of that block. It's either at the bottom, or if I've put the psychological aspects of your ambition, determination, and that in there as well, then it's a second aspect of that block.
Yeah.
Tells me if you go to the top of that when you've got sport specific movements and power drills and all that sort of stuff, if that mobility and that fundamental movement isn't bang on, there's always going to be a restriction higher up the level.
Yeah, definitely.
So if that mobility bang on, you're only going to excel yourself further up. And this is what we try to get into the kids with a prehab and mobility sessions and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely first class. But Ollie, it's been great. It's been great to get a really good insight to sort of your journey, and you know, we've covered quite a lot of like the day-to-day elements of players' motivation, discipline, a bit of everything. I think we said before. I think I said before, and I was going to talk to you more about mobility, but I think even I've sort of forgot about the mobility and sort of, you know, because I think although mobility is a really important thing, it's been really important to touch upon, you know, the discipline, the mindset, and the buy-in of the players, and you know, and get a proper insight to, you know, what you look for in a player ultimately, because you know the podcast is there to help and inspire as many people as we can. And if we've done that today, then absolutely brilliant. But for the guys that want to sort of reach out to you, find out a bit more about you, where's the best place to find you?
Probably LinkedIn, to be fair, is probably the best place. So Ollie Green on LinkedIn. I'm quite good at responding to people anyway. Like if somebody messages me, I'll always make an effort to respond to them and reply. So if anybody is interested, then feel free if you want to ask any questions, anything else. If there's any athletes out there, I do coaching on my side. So if there's anyone Wolverhampton, Shropshire, West Midlands sort of based who are looking, or even online coaching that I can that want programs for, then I'm happy to sort of do that. So yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. So with the coaching down in Shropshire now, have you got like an email address or anything that they can email you on? Or?
Yeah, so the email address is Ollie, so OLLIE, then it's a hyphen, just a little dash, green at hotmail.co.uk.
Perfect. So guys, if you're in the Shrewsbury area or the Telford area, hit Ollie up. He is your man. So, you know, send him your questions, send him your love, comment and subscribe to this channel as well. Ollie, it's been great to have you on. I really appreciate your time, and I wish you all the success going forward for the rest of the season.
Thank you. It's been good talking to you. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, buddy.